I almost got sideswiped the other day.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so someone ran a stop sign while I was crossing the street.
Oh, God.
It got me thinking about road safety
Yeah.
and how it can feel like a game of chance out there sometimes.
Right.
But thankfully, you sent over a bunch of sources to help us deep dive into this topic.
Yeah.
So get ready to explore the surprisingly complex world of road safety.
Definitely.
It's a lot more than just remembering your ABCs of driving.
Mm-hmm.
What was the thing that really jumped out at you from these sources?
Honestly, what really struck me was just how much broader this whole issue is than I think we often realize.
Okay,
We tend to focus on individual drivers and, their choices,
sure.
but all of these sources really highlight the network of factors that are in play.
Right. You really just take a whole system to
Exactly.
keep our roads safe.
Yes.
And speaking of systems, one of the sources dives into some pretty startling statistics.
Oh, really?
From India.
Oh.
Apparently, road accident fatalities there have actually been on the rise,
Wow.
with 38.6 deaths for every 100 accidents in 2021 alone.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a pretty stark reminder that this isn't just an abstract problem.
It's not, no. And it highlights that simply raising awareness sometimes isn't enough.
Right.
This particular source links those rising numbers in India to a few different things they're facing.
Okay.
Things like rapid urbanization, inadequate infrastructure,
Wow.
and even just cultural attitudes towards traffic laws in general.
Interesting.
It's a good reminder that there are usually deeper reasons behind the statistics that we see.
Yeah, for sure. So let's unpack this whole road safety awareness thing.
Okay.
One source defined it as teaching people how to conduct themselves while driving or crossing roads,
Okay.
which sounds simple enough, I
Yeah.
guess, but maybe a little vague.
Right, and that's where the conduct part gets really interesting.
Okay.
It's not just about knowing the rules.
Right.
It's about understanding the responsibility. That comes with being part of this really intricate system.
Right.
Whether you're behind the wheel, on a bike, or even just walking down the sidewalk, your actions have a ripple effect.
Like we're all part of this giant moving puzzle.
Yes, exactly.
Where every piece matters.
Exactly.
But knowing the rules is just the first step, right?
Absolutely.
One of the sources pointed out that just because someone knows they shouldn't text and drive doesn't mean they won't do it.
Right. And they made this really interesting distinction between information and impact.
Okay.
Just throwing facts at people, even with those scary crash test dummy videos,
Mm-hmm.
might not actually change behavior in the long run.
You mean those videos I had nightmares about in driver's ed weren't the be-all and end-all?
It seems like there's a difference between short-term shock value
Yeah.
and lasting behavioral change.
Interesting.
The research suggests that programs that combine education with practical training, like using simulators or doing on-road assessments, tend to have a much more significant and lasting effect, especially for new drivers.
So it's like anything else we learn.
Yes,
The hands-on experience is what really cements the knowledge.
absolutely. Like learning to ride a bike.
Exactly.
You can read all about it.
Right.
You can watch videos.
Yeah.
But nothing replaces that feeling of
Right.
balance and
Yeah.
control you get from actually doing it.
Totally. You got to get those training wheels off eventually.
Right.
And it's not just about the skills, is it?
No.
One of the sources talked about how our surroundings play a huge role too.
Oh, absolutely.
It mentioned a study where communities that combined road safety campaigns with things like
Okay.
better road signs,
Right.
clearer markings,
Yeah.
actually saw a bigger decrease in accidents.
Because even if you're the most attentive driver in the world,
Right.
confusing intersections or poor visibility
Yeah.
can really throw a wrench in things.
For sure.
It's like they say you can't outrun your headlights. It's so true. Sometimes the environment can make it harder to make safe choices.
Exactly.
But,
Yeah.
it's not always about the infrastructure.
Right.
I was reading about this program in India called the Road Safety Patrol.
Yes,
And it sounds fascinating. Have you heard of it?
I have.
What's so cool about this program is that it gets students involved
Yes.
as ambassadors for road safety.
It's amazing.
And it's not just about holding up signs or anything.
Right.
They're actually out there helping to direct traffic near schools.
Exactly. And they're often working alongside traffic police,
Wow.
getting that hands-on experience,
Right.
learning the rules of the road in a really practical way.
Yeah,
It's a brilliant approach
it is.
because it not only teaches them about road safety,
Mhm.
but it empowers them to be advocates for it
Right.
among their peers.
Yeah, it's like embedding those good habits early on.
Yeah.
It's like when schools teach kids about healthy eating,
Right.
It's more likely to stick if it's part of their routine from a young age. Absolutely. And this approach really highlights the importance of education
Okay.
as a preventative measure.
Okay.
Because often we only focus on dealing with the aftermath of accidents.
Right.
But what if we could prevent more of them from happening
That's a great
in
point.
the first place?
That is a great point.
Right.
But let's be honest.
Yeah.
There are always going to be those drivers out there
Always.
who seem to think the rules don't apply to them.
Unfortunately, yes.
You know, the ones who make you wonder if they even looked at their driver's manual.
Exactly. How do you reach those folks?
Right.
That's the million-dollar question.
I know.
One of the sources suggested that for drivers with a history of offenses,
Okay.
combining educational programs with stricter penalties,
Okay.
like license suspensions
Yeah.
or hefty fines,
Right.
can be more effective than just education alone.
So it's about finding the right balance
Yes,
between education and enforcement,
finding that balance.
and maybe turning up the heat a bit
A little.
for those who need it.
Right.
And speaking of changing the game entirely,
Okay.
one of the sources briefly touched on autonomous vehicles
Yes.
and how they might change the landscape of road safety in the future.
It's a whole other world.
I know, right? That feels like a whole other deep dive
It does.
waiting to happen.
Absolutely. But it is really interesting
Yeah.
to consider how technology is already playing a role in making our roads safer today.
Right.
We have things like lane departure warnings,
Yeah.
automatic emergency braking,
Mhm.
all designed to compensate for human error.
It's like having a co-pilot
Right.
who's always on high alert,
Yes.
even when we're feeling a little less focused.
Precisely. And while these technologies have the potential
Okay.
to significantly reduce accidents,
Yeah.
they also raise a lot of new questions.
It makes you wonder, if cars are becoming safer by design,
Yeah.
does that risk making us less engaged as drivers?
Right.
Like, do we start relying on the tech too much
Yeah.
and let our own awareness slip?
That's a big question. And it's something that researchers are really grappling with right now.
Interesting.
Is it possible that having all these safety nets could lead to just a decrease
Right.
in what they call defensive driving skills?
Wow. So it's almost like a double-edged sword.
Yeah,
We're making all this amazing progress with technology,
absolutely.
but the human element is always going to be a factor.
It is. It's always going to be there.
Yeah.
Technology can assist.
Right,
It
yeah.
can mitigate.
Sure.
But ultimately, a safe driving culture depends on individual responsibility
Yeah.
and awareness.
It's about all of us doing our part
Yes.
to create a space where everyone feels safe
Exactly.
and respected, whether they're behind the wheel,
Absolutely.
on a bike,
Yes.
or just crossing the street.
That's right.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, what would you say is the thing,
Oh, that's a good
a
question.
most important thing for us to all remember?
Well, aside from the obvious things,
Right.
like buckling up, avoiding distractions,
Sure.
following the rules of the road.
Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway here is that road safety is about fostering a sense of collective responsibility.
Yep.
It's about recognizing that our actions impact those around us,
Mhm.
and that even small changes can make a big difference.
That's a really powerful point to end on. This whole conversation has been really eye-opening.
It has been.
Who knew there was so much more to road safety than just remembering your seatbelt?
It's a fascinating field.
It is.
It touches on everything from psychology and education
Right?
to engineering and even public health.
Wow.
And, the more we understand about those factors
Yeah.
that contribute to both safe and unsafe roads,
Right.
the better equipped we'll be to actually make a positive impact.
So true. It really makes you think about those times when maybe you've been a little too relaxed behind the wheel.
Yeah, we've all been there.
So here's something to think about as you head out on your next drive, knowing what we know now. What's one small change you could make to contribute to safer roads?
That's a great question.
It is something to reflect on. This has been The Deep Dive, and remember, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to staying safe out there.